All right, music fans, welcome. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you, just like me. So I had a chance to listen to David Lee Roth's retirement speech or statement. Um, I don't know. I guess there's not much of a difference, but it was kind of a speech because it wasn't just a quick, because when you're dealing with Dave, you're not going to get a quick statement. You're going to get storytelling, some of which is hard to follow. He was talking a lot about butter patties and ketchup packets during this particular address because he was reminiscing about the days when Van Halen would be doing these gigs back in the mid 70s, early to mid 70s, and they didn't have any money. And then when they got all this money, they would go to this like overnight breakfast dive bar kind of place. I don't know if it was a dive bar, but it was more just for food. And they would go in and basically eat everything on the menu. They would order everything. And apparently the waitresses were ready for them when they showed up because, they knew this was going to be an all-night event where they would basically just eat forever. Dave obviously paints this picture of these guys being broke and hungry and starving for food and success. And it's interesting because it's typical. Like I said, Dave, I don't know, he should have been a really successful talk show type guy. But I think what happens with Dave is he wants to say so much and he wants to cram everything into this stream of consciousness thing. And a lot of times he loses himself, not just the audience, but and then he switches subjects. And that's what I mean. This is supposed to be about him saying goodbye and why he's leaving. And again, the two food items that he kept talking about were butter patties and ketchup packets. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you got a lot of butter patties and you got a lot of ketchup packets. That's interesting. And he paints a great picture in a way because you feel like you're there at this diner just watching these guys pig out, which I guess is his goal here. But along the way during this speech, he's talking about how his doctors have told him, or his handlers and his doctors, which again, very cryptic stuff like, okay, you can't do this anymore. You're endangering yourself if you continue to do this. Which, by the way, when's the last time Dave has played a gig? It's been a while, right? I mean, he was kicked off the End of the Road tour, and now he's basically going to retire. He'll do the Vegas gigs, and it's rumored, I don't know if anyone's confirmed this, but it's rumored that Alex Van Halen is going to be there. Now, about Van Halen, during this entire speech, he kind of made it sound like this will be the last gasp for Van Halen. Because remember, he told folks a year or two ago that he was Van Halen de facto. I don't know. There's Sammy Hagar, who is still very viable, doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon. I mean, he may, but the point is he's got Michael Anthony over there, and that's important. For Van Halen fans, Sammy and Michael are very important. And yes, Dave and Alex also very important, but he obviously wants to kind of say that he's going to put a nice little bow on this at the end, meaning this will be Van Halen's last gasp. Are they going to try to bill this as Van Halen? I don't think so, but with talk of Alex being there, Dave is sending a message basically that this is Van Halen's finale. And it's kind of weird because for a lot of fans, Sammy Hagar, who is very important and who can still sing and who has a great band, by the way, and who has Michael Anthony in his band, Who's to say, Sammy's not Van Halen de facto? And, Sammy is planning on moving forward and doing gigs and probably recording music. Um, I don't know. It's the whole speech. When I'm listening to it, I almost kind of just feel sorry for Dave. I think David Lee Roth made a critical career error when he left Van Halen. There's no nice way to talk about that. Here's a band that was on top of the world. A couple of bands did this in the 1980s. They either decided to change their singer, like Van Halen did. Peter Cetera in Chicago, that was a big deal. And Peter Cetera says he was forced out of Chicago, but here's Chicago and Van Halen both selling more albums than ever. You had the Police, who were in the midst of being the greatest band ever, and they just quit because of Sting and his ego. And so a lot of 80s fans have withdrawals from this stuff because they're thinking, okay, Journey, we talk about Journey, where Steve Perry just walks away, right? And then I could just see Ross Valerie just reaching out going, hey, where you going? But I think with Dave, this was a self-inflicted wound. I mean, hey, I'm going to be a movie star. Hey, I can do this. I don't need these guys. And yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. I mean, he had a good solo career for, maybe 3 years, and then it just collapsed. And you can blame the 90s a little bit on the collapse of Dave, but as I've said in other videos, Van Halen with Sammy went much deeper into that decade. And if they had kept it together and there wasn't this problem between Sammy and Ed, I think they could have survived that and kept going. And, they would have accomplished a lot without Dave. And then you would have had to measure the Dave era against the Sammy era in a completely different way. But I think Dave is going back and kind of reminiscing to try to just take fans back into that little space that they were in at that time. And it's interesting. It's interesting, but all I can think of are butter patties and ketchup packets. And here he is saying that, the end is near. My handlers don't know if I should be out here. And the doctors and the handlers have recommended that I stop. And so I guess the big issue is what's wrong with David Lee Roth. And we don't know. And this is, again, part of the mystery. We didn't know how bad things were where Ed was concerned because nobody said anything for so long. So this is the Van Halen way, I guess, and Dave actually said during this that he thought that he would go first, meaning that he wouldn't be here anymore. And, Ed would still be here, but he would be the first one to leave planet Earth and so forth. I don't know. He's saying a lot of stuff in this, and some of it is relevant. It's a long, strange dialogue. He said after Ed passed away, he said, what a long, strange trip it's been, to quote Jerry Garcia. But with David Lee Roth, it's always a strange trip. So I guess we just wait and maybe we'll find out what is truly going on with David Lee Roth. But he said during this speech that that's it. That's my explanation. I'm done. So don't expect to hear anything else about this topic. So maybe you won't hear anything else, because I think Dave and this whole crew, they keep everything really close to the vest. Sammy is different. Sammy shoots his mouth off and says all kinds of stuff. And I prefer that because at least it's done. A lot of these guys are kind of information whores. In other words, they use little bits and pieces of information to just draw people in and to keep them there. You could call it clickbait, but it's all this intrigue, and there's no closure to it. So it's like sitting there on the edge of your seat, just waiting for what's going to happen next. And for a lot of fans, we're just tired of all this stuff. Play some music. And I'm not saying anything negative toward Dave if there's a medical problem or something. I hope whatever it is, he can overcome it, you know, and just if he retires, like I say, grab a Hawaiian shirt, some Bermuda shorts, maybe head down to Cabo and hang out with Sammy. Although I don't think he's going to do that. So in any event, that's my hyper analysis, my over analysis of his speech, which again, if you go listen to it, it's vintage David Lee Roth. And it is kind of hard to follow. And at the end of it all, I just felt sorry. I don't know why. I just felt sorry for David Lee Roth. And anyway, that's my video on the topic. And thanks for watching the channel and for subscribing. Don't forget, new patrons on Patreon, we have conversations over there, $1 a month. A lot of folks who are on, you know, certain pages all day long. Oftentimes they'll send me great links to articles and videos and things that are pertinent to my channel, and I appreciate that. If you want to be one of those journalists, or you know, basically I have a crew of folks that they don't know, they're basically working on my behalf, and I appreciate that. But they'll send me stuff, and they'll even say things like, Dave's not going to believe this, meaning me. I'm not going to believe this. And I look at some of these links, and they know the stuff I cover, so it's helpful. Anyway, have yourself a great day, and we'll see you soon.